Welcome to the Dear Doc Podcast, where we will discuss the business of running a dental practice with a panel of experts. Now, your host, Dr. Christopher Hoffpower.
Hey guys, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Dear Doc Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Christopher Hoffpower, coming to you from my home studio here in Alvin, Texas. Now, today's guest I've been trying to get on for quite some time because they actually helped me in my practice whenever I first started out. They also helped my wife in her veterinary practice, and that is Mr. Fred King from Silkin Consulting. Fred, how the heck are you? It's been a while since we've seen each other face to face.
I'm doing great. I'm doing fantastic. You look great.
Well, I'm probably about 45 pounds heavier than I should be to look great, but I'll take it. So
yeah, well, I'm about 20, so we're close.
You guys are out in Portland, right?
Yeah, we're actually in Tigard at the moment, which is real close to Portland.
So talk to me a little bit about the history of Silkin and also, what you guys teach.
Okay. Well, the history is we actually started back in the 1983. So it's been, 38 years doing business, and we've done probably close to 5,000 practices during that time period. As you mentioned, we do dentists, we also do veterinarians, and we do optometrists. Those are the three. And so we're in the healthcare area, and we've been doing well, and even during the COVID time. So we've progressed.
I imagine people needed your help then more than pretty much ever previously, because it was everyone always throws around game changer or unprecedented, but this truly was an unprecedented time.
Yeah, there's no question about it. We've been through 4 recessions, so I was actually getting ready for a recession.
I was
in
too.
2019. So I was actually. So we started prepping for a recession in about 2017-18 and getting going.
I'm curious. So what tipped me off was in late 2019, the Federal Reserve released a white paper that discussed the effect of negative interest rates on the economy. And so that kind of freaked me out. So I started looking at what interest rates were doing, unemployment was doing, what the stock market was doing. And only one time in history had they looked similar, and that was in 1930. And that scared the bejesus out of me. That's actually whenever I began to look at exiting my practice, which, thank you, you guys helped me to build. So that ended up pretty well. So talk to me a little bit, speaking of which, about the types of things that you guys teach dentists and veterinarians and optometrists, and how you help them to run better practices and become better business people.
Right. Well, over the last 5 years specifically, we've been codifying a lot of our material due to the fact that we have many of our consultants who have been with me for 25, 30 years. They've been transitioning out over the last few years, and a lot of them are still staying for another 4 or 5 years, and we brought in a whole new crop. Okay. Now, the reason I bring that up, because transitioning for anybody, it can be quite it can go into turmoil if you don't do it correctly, right? And you don't get the value you could get out of your business. If you do it correctly, then, as you have done well in regards to it, then life can be good for you. So as we started looking over the transitioning, because both of my other partners had pretty well transitioned out, I was the Lone Ranger for the last almost 10 years.
Okay.
So we decided to codify it, and I thought it would be a really easy thing to do. So in regards to it, we ended up in the codification of coming up with the fact that there's 6 very specific systems in every practice. And if the owner of the system understands them really well, then they're going to do better and they're going to do well. So the simplicity of that codification is immaterial, what some people would call best practices over the years of taking that material for the last 35 years and then codifying it into very specific systems that one can learn in a very focused way. And so you have the owner system, which is a very important system. You have executive system, you've got a personnel system, you've got a finance system, you've got a marketing system, and you got a PR system. So if each one of those particular systems are in play and doing well, and we have, like I said, 5,000 case studies in this, then the person will do well. So we even got more focused on putting together the protocols, the checklists, and everything else that goes with that. So when you ask me that question, that kind of brings up a lot because,
right,
we've gone through this process for the last 5 years.
Well, for some of the things that I remember, and I know some of this information is proprietary, but I think I can talk a little bit about what I learned from you.
Sure. Anything you want to talk about, I'm easy.
Okay, so one of the things that I learned is that all dentists are in love with keeping statistics. They run these KPI, they make these lists, and there's probably about 5 KPI that are super, super important to any practice.
Right.
But when you have those numbers, a lot of people go, oh, well, this went up, oh, well, this went down. And they kind of haphazardly address those things. And one of the things that you guys taught me was that there's a very, to use your word, very codified method for addressing any specific condition that your business might be in. And so let's look at it, and we look at the behavior of these conditions over a graph, right? And so we look at the slope of the line, and based upon what the slope of the line is doing, it tells us the condition that specific KPI is in. And each condition, let's say emergency or danger or normal or affluence, if you're in one of those conditions, there's a very specific way, scientifically studied, that you should react and what you should do. And so let's say we've got a line slope and it's flat. Well, most people would say, well, great, there was no change. But that is actually a condition of emergency. Because all businesses naturally should be growing over time. And if you're not growing, then you're not keeping up with the base inflation of your cost of goods and services. So if you have a flat line, you're actually in a state of emergency. So there's a very specific way that you handle that. And what is that way, Fred? So if my chart says that my new patient numbers are in emergency, what do I do?
Right. Good. Wow. You are a great student, and you got it, man. I'm so happy. I'm so happy that you can even express it that way, because that's one of the key attributes of being able to take something and then apply it. So let's take emergency, which is flat. So you've got a KPI that's it's flatter than a pancake, whatever it may be. So as like you said, most people, they'll go, oh, okay, well, I'm doing okay. Oh no, man, if you don't do something, you're in trouble. And you can do it with either weekly, monthly, or a trend line, meaning if it's over time, it's going like this, which we see all the time. So one of the first things you do, depending on if it's an individual you're talking about or if it's a organization. So if it's organization, you do this immediately. And we had our clientele do this during the COVID time. I didn't care who they were, because everybody was starting to flatten out hard.
Right.
Very first step, promote. You make yourself known, you get it out. And we did that too. That's why we did so well during COVID. First thing, I did like 6 videos within a short, which I never do them. Just get the data out. We tell our clients, talk to your patients, talk to your clientele, let them know you're there, promote that you're, even if you're shut down. We had people who shut down. We go, good, let them know you're shut down. Send a video, send emails, promote you just go for that, So that was the very first step.
My promotion, what I did is I got onto the town Facebook page. I told them that we were shut down except for emergencies. I gave them my personal cell phone number, which I actually didn't regret, which is crazy, because I thought I was going to. And then I gave them weekly updates on what was coming out of the state, because I was actually working closely with the board and with the TDA on figuring out what the heck we were going to do to address the problem. And so I was giving them updates every week. And so I was in front of them every single week. So that's kind of what I did for promotion. I thought you'd be kind of proud of that.
Oh, I am so proud, because it was, I found a lot of the docs were number one, they get confused. Now, the ones who've been with us before, boy, they jumped on it. All I had to do was say, hey, don't forget, this is where we're at. And they were, they were moving it. So, as you're looking and promoting and producing in whatever area you are, you got to take a look at what that means. And there's, like you just said, you let people know, you gave them your cell number, and you think you're going to get inundated, but you don't necessarily, some people might call, but good. You want that. You want the interaction. You want people to know you care about them and that you're there for them. So that's very key. And that's what we did with our clients, within that context, there's a portion of it where you've got to stiffen up your own discipline. It's a last step, but it's actually within the context of the entirety of it, which means that you can't go back on your heels. That means if all of a sudden you're getting distracted, you got to get back to focus. If you've got a front office, a desk person has to go home and work from home. If you can get them to work from home, get them to work from home. Outflowing, constantly letting people know what's happening. So you just hit the number one thing that I think that if more people would have done, and a lot of people did, I know all our clients were, but a lot of people didn't. A lot of doctors didn't do that, and they started doing this big time. And I know people got closed. Different states, they have different things, but you can't go back. So you got to change after that. What are you going to do next? You got to change your own operating condition, your operations. What is it that you're going to do? What did you do? I'm curious now. You're such a good student there.
I had one person come in and work the front desk, and I had them begin calling all of our recalls who were supposed to be coming in during that period, and telling them that we were putting them on a special recall list, that as soon as we were allowed to reopen and see patients, that we'd be calling them to schedule. We told them when we thought it was going to be over and when we thought we were going to be able to see patients, which I actually missed the mark widely on that. Even with my inside information, I was totally wrong.
Yeah, weren't we all?
I do have to say, economizing was really easy.
Yeah, that's one of the steps is economizing.
One step everyone remembered to do this time, because it kind of happened for you, right?
That's right. Yeah, it was forced in pretty hard, but that's great. That's exactly well done.
As part of my economizing, I did something that a lot of businesses didn't do. I behaved, I guess, in a lot of people's minds, irrationally. I did not take the EIDL loans. I did not take the PPPs, because my thinking was that every time the government tells you they're going to give you something for free, there's a huge line of strings attached to that. And it turns out, as it happens, I was right. A lot of people are suffering that did take these PPP loans. So I'm happy about that. But my thinking is that I'd be putting my business in a poor situation, because I just knew we were going to be taxed on that as income or something. So that I just kind of avoided that whole situation. So what's our next step? If I remember correctly, there are 4 steps in emergency. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so
and the 5th step, your actual 5th step is to discipline.
Right.
And then the first step, do you have them up there?
Oh no, I'm not putting them up yet. Just talking to you about that. So our first step.
Oh, okay. The first step is you produce and you promote, then you change, and then you economize.
Okay.
And then you change your operating basis.
Right. Which everyone kind of did, because everyone's operating basis changed because we were all shut down.
Right.
Our 4th step.
And then you put in the order you're going to need to put in. any of the policies or anything you're going to need to put in place so you can hold everything. So then you can start pushing it upward, and you got to discipline yourself. I mean, that's one of the key points of really discipline. I can't tell you how important that is. And what you just talked about in regards to what you did, that's a discipline. Right. That's a discipline of looking at something and going, here are the protocols. And that's one of the big things we have that I really believe people have to have: checklists, protocols, step-by-step actions. Absolutely. That when the pressure comes, you've got your stable datums, your points of reference that you can grab a hold of and use. And
one of the things that when people come to my office, they all marvel at, and I've actually shared some of my own creations with my group, is that I've always got every single procedure mapped out from what you do when you enter the room all the way to what you do whenever you're cleaning up the room. And that is because, and I paraphrase Silkin in this a lot, I was taught by Silkin that you should write up your own job such that a sixth grader should be able to come in and pick up what you wrote and do your job the next day if you got hit by a bus. That's right. So well done. that's kind of the way that I write my SOPs in my office, and the way that I wrote my job descriptions for my team as well. I had them write the job descriptions, and people are always like, how do you get them to do that? I was like, just tell them to do it. It's part of their job. Write up the job description. Page number one in the job description. You must write up your job description. Okay, cool. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's get the rest of this stuff. So that was huge for me in my practice, because it allowed me to really maintain quality control over time. And it made my team accountable to something that was measurable, which I think was a huge thing to learn from you guys. One of the things I'm going to ask you to do is to share with us what I like to call Silkinese. So one of Silkin's philosophies is that language sometimes gets sloppy. And so when we use a word, many times it has emotional connotations attached to it that interfere with logic. And a big thing in Silkin is you follow logic, you don't follow emotion. That's the reason you graph things. That's the reason that you keep KPIs, is to keep yourself from making emotional decisions about your business. Right. So it's also very in keeping, I don't know if you've read it, but the E-Myth by Gerber. Whenever I read that book, it was every chapter I'm looking through, I'm like, this is exactly what Silkin teaches. So you guys have what I like to call Silkinese. Let's talk a little bit about some of the vocabulary that surrounds your training. Sure. So if I was, let's say, I'm going to take one that people are going to totally misunderstand. Let's say I told you I ran into some problems with my team because I was being reasonable. Right. Let's talk about what that means. So if I'm being reasonable, a normal person, normal English would think, okay, well, reasonable is reasonable. You're just, you're being fair, right? Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about being reasonable as a practice owner.
Yeah, it's allowing ideas that seem to be logical, but they have no basic premise to them. As an example, people will fill in. If they don't have data, they'll just sort of fill it in and make it okay, make it right. Matter of fact, a person can say, well, our patients aren't coming in because, and they'll come up with some BS kind of reason, it's reasonable. Oh yeah, there's a strike in the city, or people don't really want to come during the summertime, or, things like that. That's reasonable, because it agrees with common ideas, I guess you'd call it.
Almost when an excess confirmation bias. Speaking as a scientist, it's a confirmation bias. That's right. Patients aren't coming, so I think they're not coming because it's X holiday, or it's summer, or it's raining. And the funny thing is that when you fall into that trap, you actually create that reality.
That's right.
You emotionally live that problem on that same level. And so
That's right.
everyone you speak to, you bring them down to that emotional level and you push out that idea into the universe. You screw yourself.
Oh yeah,
Making those assumptions
absolutely.
without datum. And so
No, yeah. Our best clients think exactly what you're saying there. And I hear it from their, the top elite, they get it. It's like, if it doesn't come up with, if you ask a question, you got to be able to, if you come up with a reason and you've come up to that, you got to be able to have it that gives you a result that you can use to change the problem. If the problem is low patience and somebody says, well, it's because it's too hot outside, what are you going to do? Go out and change the temperature? No, you can't change the temperature. It's hot out there. Good. So why aren't they coming in? What is the real reason they're not coming in? And if you do it right, and if you get everybody on board, it evaporates. You'll figure it out. So that's spot on. That's exactly correct.
Absolutely. And one of the things I find is that sometimes there is more than one reason why something is occurring. However, if you discipline yourself to only act upon those things which can be acted upon, you can change the outcome of that problem anyway, because instead of looking for reasons for the problem to continue existing, which is what you're really doing if you just say, oh, it's because it's hot outside, you're looking for ways that are going to fix the problem because you're looking for things you can address.
Right. You've got it, because otherwise you're dispersed. Your mind is everywhere. It's like the person who comes home at night and they've got 20 things on their mind. And then the next morning, they've still got those 20 things and they don't have solutions for 20 of them.
And you get this. And it's so funny because in learning, like I said, I call it Silkinese. In learning some Silkinese, I learned to identify problems that I had previously that I didn't really understand. So like, okay, you are dispersed. So when you're dispersed, you can't think correctly about
That's
anything.
right.
It's not just the problem that you're having, it's everything else in your life suffers as well, because your thinking is all tied up and you are interbulated. You're not able to come out of that space until you figure out what the problem was. And you guys pointed something out to me that I had realized before, but I'd never known why. Whenever you're reading like a technical manual and you keep like, you get distracted and you come back and you reread the sentence, and you get distracted and you come back and reread the sentence. What's really happened is somewhere in the last 10 words, there was a word you didn't truly understand the definition of. You glossed over it, but it was important to being able to hang on your framework, your mental framework, so that you can understand and accept the information that's being given to you by the book. And so that's a huge habit I started just because of you guys. Whenever I read, if I get to a sentence, I find myself reading that sentence twice. I go back to the previous sentence and I look for any word I don't know specifically, the whole definition. I pull out a dictionary, I look the word up, because that is going to keep you from becoming dispersed or interbulated, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about some other Silkinese terms, because I'm fascinated by it, because each one of them is this huge concept that it just kind of blossoms in your mind whenever you hear about it. So give me.
Well, just take what you just finished saying, because I think that's when doctors and I think over the last 10 years, there's been a change that's occurred, and hopefully with us, because we were the first ones really, and brought up metrics. We were the first ones that talked about nomenclature going back 30, 35 years.
Right.
When you're speaking to a patient, you keep the nomenclature so clean that a sixth grader can understand it. And, even when somebody says, I'm going to need a root canal, or I'm going to need, whatever it may be, really define it for a person so they understand it. Otherwise, they do get confused. That's been shown. It's now a scientific fact.
Absolutely.
Before, so that's one of the concepts. Everybody in the practice does not use words that a sixth grader wouldn't understand. And I don't care if the person's got a Harvard degree, because when it comes to medicine, the only person who really understands it is the doctor at that point in time. And unfortunately, they know way too much.
Absolutely. Well, and that's one of those things. And that's why I'm kind of prodding you with some of these questions, because in a very weird way, you are in that same position. Because as a doctor, I forget about the 10 years of school I had to have to get to the point where I have the understanding, plus my 10 years of practice, to get to the point where I have the understanding of what specifically something means, and it becomes second nature to me. What you forget is all the rungs on that ladder that allowed you to have that view, that you climbed up this ladder over the years. You forget the first rung. Well, your patient doesn't know what a bacteria really is. You know?
That's right.
One of the things I say, and it always gets a laugh out of the patients, and people are always horrified. Other doctors are always horrified when I tell them some of the things I say to my patients. But I'll tell them something to the effect of, Bob, do you remember when we were kids? They had this book, and it was called Everybody Poos. Well, bacteria are kind of little bitty microscopic bugs in your mouth, and they poo all over the place, and they're pooing all over your teeth. And when they poo on your teeth, it dissolves your teeth, and that's how you get cavities. And Bob's going, well, that's disgusting, but I get it, right? So the language is chosen, and this is something else I learned from Silkin. The language is chosen specifically to elicit a very specific emotional response and to cause ownership of the problem to happen in the patient's mind. Right. These bugs in my mouth are pooping on my teeth, and that's why I have cavities.
Right.
It's amazing what kind of case acceptance you can get when you use language like that, and you use it specifically and intentionally, because as the old saying goes, the most intentional always wins.
Right. Yep. That is, and you do that with your staff. Even your staff, honestly, even staff you think have been around, they've been around, they know you, they know what you're doing. If you were just to ask them, what are some of the clinical actions that you were doing, and that includes front desk tech, your tech people, maybe they've gone up the training thing, but the people in the front, they don't necessarily know everything, and they become more part of a group, and they understand what that group is all about. One of the things that I think is really key, for the doctors and business people, and I use the term, the doctor you mentioned, they spend 10 years becoming.
Because you have to have that discussion right now. Okay, so as a practice owner, you wear two hats. One hat says I'm a doctor. Well, executive hat too. Yeah. So talk to us about that. So I go into the practice Monday morning. I'm having a problem because Susie didn't show up for her appointment. I'm currently wearing the doctor hat. Should I be making business decisions while I'm wearing the doctor hat? So explain hats to us and explain why not.
They're told there's 3 different hats, and they're very key. And when I go over systems, the first system, which was a lost, I really believe me, I spent a long time. I taught at people who were getting their MBAs. And one of the things I learned a little bit more about was the research. Because with Google, I was kind of like, okay, there's all kinds of this research out there. So I started researching, but nobody had certain data that was really important for practices. And one of them was, it's very unique in the medical field that you have a doctor who's also an executive and also an owner. So this is very unique. A lot of businesses, you'll have an owner who maybe is, they're doing retail, or it's amazing that you can do as well as you do with all the actions that are coming at you constantly. So like you say, you walk in the door, you're the doctor. Now your book is empty. I'm being a little facetious. Right. So somebody better get on it. Now, who's going to get on it? Well, all of a sudden you go, well, we got to fill it. You're becoming the executive now. Right. And then all of a sudden you're doing that. Well, If you have a good office manager, you got somebody who's going to take care of it for you. That person is going to be stepping in, and that person is going to be doing it, so you don't have to do that. But then there's the other part. Who's working with the office manager? Who's helping the office manager? There's a rare breed, and I use the word rare breed, that can wear all three hats without dropping dead from a heart attack.
I find that most people can wear two.
That two, absolutely. I totally agree. They can wear two. And if they have a good, one of the first things, I push it all the time. Get an office manager, get an office manager, get an office manager. And the reason for that is so the doctor doesn't have to be the office manager and deal with all the personnel. The problem with that is now the office manager needs somebody, which means the owner, which is typically the doctor, unless the doctor is sold out somewhere, is going to have to wear that hat. So the office manager needs to turn to somebody. And that means the office manager, the owner, is going to be that person they're going to turn to. And if where the owner of the business, who's the entrepreneur, the true entrepreneur here is the owner of the business. We've had clients who have sold 10, 20 was the top end practices. They rolled them through and sold them to their associate. They were being an owner. The key to that person, the particular doctor, he had a great office manager that ran the place, and he could be the doctor and be the owner. But that office manager needed somebody to talk to. Otherwise, what happens to the owner? They go back on their heels. God help me if my office manager leaves, I'm dead. Right.
You know what? I call that being held hostage.
Exactly. It's blackmail. And unintentionally or intentionally, to the degree that the owner, the true entrepreneur of the activity, can say, okay, I know what that office manager does. I can watch the statistics of that office manager. And there's other hats, the owner has to deal with the attorneys and the CPAs and all that kind of stuff. Office managers typically don't deal with that, and that's part of the owner hat. But at least in relationship to it, the owner has to be enough of an executive to be somebody who gets that person to get something done. Now, you were talking about words. Most people don't know what the word executive means. It means to execute. And the word by itself and the terminology indicates you get a result. So you're going to execute something for a result. So as an executive, if you're an owner, you got the office manager, you expect that office manager is going to be an executive and they will get results. How do you know that? What you went back to early. We have metrics, we have stats, we have something we can use conditions.
That I think that everyone should know. A metric is anything that can be measured. And
that's
every
right.
single task, no matter how minute, has a metric. You just have to
absolutely.
What that metric is.
Yes.
Now, they're not all important to look at.
Right.
There's only, like I said, 4 or 5 metrics that are really important to look at in a practice. But when you start digging down, let's say your new patient numbers are suffering. Well, you start looking for the reasons, because the whole point of finding out that the new patient numbers are suffering is to fix it. So you look for,
well said.
So you say, okay, well, what's going on? Our phones were out for 3 days. Okay, so 3 days, we usually get X number of patients per week that are new patients. How many are we sharp by? Does that percentage of those days out account for this? That may be the reason.
Right.
Did the doctor go off to CE? The doctor was away at CE for 5 days. Did that account for the number of patients that we didn't see? And mathematically, you're going to be able to track it down if you just logically look at things. And that is why those sub-statistics are very important, because they allow you to drill down deeper into the problem and figure out what the actual issue is so you can fix it. Because that's the whole point of keeping metrics, is to be able to actually create the environment you're in rather than reacting to it.
That's right. That is, and the sub statistics are really key, because if you're looking at your top, let's say top 5 metrics you're looking at, you don't have to be looking at all of them all the time. I mean, you look at them, but if one's going down or one goes straight up, as an example, you go, wow, that went straight up. How come? That went straight down. And I don't go into the, oh yeah, and you already know the answer. No, check out your sub statistics and find out for sure. We don't need guessing or I knows. Let's get the science to it.
That's a beautiful answer, Fred, because I said earlier, you want to track it down so you can find the reason, so you can fix it. Well, what Fred just brought up there is super important. It's not just finding the reason to fix it. It's also finding the reason that caused it, so you can repeat the reason, so you can recause it.
That's right.
So let's say you made a Facebook post, okay, and you got 5 new patients from that Facebook post. Well, doctor, perhaps every week you should make a Facebook post in the same vein. And if it no longer works, one of 2 things happened. A, you've changed something about the way that you did it, or B, you were wrong.
Right.
And so you need to go back and relook at your statistics and see exactly where that issue was.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and it's right there in front of you. Once you build the dashboard, the proper one, some of the times what happens is people will have their dashboards, they'll have their information, but it won't identify what the sub statistics really should be, or they're misidentifying them. So that's the key. It's a lot of the thought process has to go in. Do you have the correct ones in place for your practice, and do they drill down enough so you have accountabilities all the way through, which is key.
Absolutely. So Fred, let's talk about some very specific things now. We've talked about metrics. We've talked about how we monitor them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to ask you to explain the metrics in a dental practice that you recommend people follow and why. And then I'm going to ask you to give them, because anytime I bring somebody on, I want them to do a big give where they teach somebody something that they can walk out tomorrow and use, and it makes their life better.
Okay, good.
So I want you to explain the statistics you recommend usually, and I know it's very customized to each practice, but there's some commonality there. So which statistics do you always recommend people follow, and what do the slopes of those graphs look like, and what are the proper behaviors for those slopes? Because right there, you've just given somebody a $15,000 gift.
Right. Yeah, right. You're looking for the condensed version of the Oxford English Dictionary.
Exactly.
I know. Let me put it down. But feel free to ask me any questions while I'm explaining it.
Absolutely. Because I'm going to be listening as if I don't know this stuff.
So there are certain metrics that are very important in regards to each system that I'm talking about. The owner system, a very specific, important metric that is the value of your practice. What is the current value of your practice today? Now, why is that important? Because here's your value here, and you're planning on transitioning in 5 and 10 years out. Now, if you're going to use the value of your practice as part of your asset at the end, where do you want it to be? So let's say, for instance, right now it's worth $1 million. Forget all the corporate buyouts that are going on, which I know will continue, but that's part of it too. Where will it be in 5 years or 10 years? And if it's going to be there, how are you going to get it there? Some people don't even think about how I'm going to get here. They have to have a baseline to even start. So as an owner, having that baseline is very key. The other one that for an owner, I'm going to go through each one of them. As an owner, that's very key is how much money do you have in reserves to be able to deal with a downturn? Or you can then at the end just take that money and do whatever you want with. But you got to have a certain amount in reserves for yourself. That's a statistic. Both of these are metrics that you can look at, and it's very easy to look at. Those are longer term metrics that go out, and you can watch them quarterly, you can watch them yearly. A shorter term metric, yeah, go ahead.
I have a question I want you to address before we go any further. Whenever you're talking about practice valuation, I feel that the most fair practice valuation is an EBITDA, and most dentists don't understand anything about that. What do you guys recommend that a dentist uses to determine valuation of their practice?
What we tell them to do is get a professional person who evaluates practices, because that's not what we do.
Right.
What we do is go, because there's 4 different ways to value. I know about valuating a practice. I know the different methodologies. Things got turned upside down in the last few years with corporates coming in. So it goes back to, what do you want to do? You want to sell it to an associate? And there's a lot of different formulas that go with it. So I just go, we're not in that business. Find somebody you trust. Talk to Dr. Chris, in regards to who he trusts and all that, and make it so you can get that baseline. And then you can just start discussing what's real out there, because in the end, it's what people will pay for.
Right.
That's the, I've seen people pay multiples on EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes and amortization. I've seen them pay 8, 10, 20 times on that. Right. Others on growth. So to answer that, that's my answer to it. So
I would say, guys, if you want to start doing this tomorrow, here's what you do.
Yes.
You take your net.
Right.
We're not going to get into what add backs are. We're not going to get into a couple other things that go into the valuation, but you take your net, multiply it times 5. That's
okay.
And then track it.
Good.
So here's the deal. When you're tracking these numbers, it is more important to be consistent than to be
right. Right. That's
just
right.
Track it the same way every single time, and as long as you're doing that, even though this is a very simplified way of determining the value of your practice, as long as you're doing that every single time, then that number will stay true to whatever the trend is in the practice.
Yeah, that's right. As long as the numbers have a logic base to them, and you can, like you just said, 5x, times your net. I mean, I can get into, what do you mean by net? And, what's the doctor taking?
That's what I said. We're not going to talk about add backs or anything like that.
Right. None of that stuff. We'll just take that and then we'll go 5. Is it increasing or isn't it? If it's not, I like net. Personally, I like net. I like net with the doctor's pay in there, and the reason is because it tells you what you're getting now, what you're going to need and what somebody's going to be looking at. But that's we're more on a similar vein together, but we'll leave it to the experts, quote unquote. Right?
Absolutely. So you were about to give some short-term things that they can do.
So then you got a real short-term one, which is your cash bills. It's how much cash do you have in the bank right now, not your reserves. That's a different thing. How much cash do you have right in the bank? First of the month, I got 50,000 or I got 80,000. How much in bills do you have for that month? And if you look at it and you go, and you should be able, that graph, cash to bills, shouldn't be this way. It shouldn't be under. It should be this. Now,
I have to say, when you guys first started helping me, that's exactly what my cash to bills looked like, if you recall.
Yeah,
it was all crosswise. It was a very bad.
And people can play that. There's all kinds of games, and I understand. I've been doing this for almost 40 years. There's games where, I got cash, but I don't, and I got bills, but I really don't have these bills, and they reasonable. Or I've got this cash, which is, my credit card, or whatever. Or I've got cash coming in, or whatever it may be. It's, what do you got in the bank? It's hardcore. It's real hardcore.
And it should be viewed in the same light as a diagnosis, guys. And this is one of the things that Silkin teaches that I love. When you're looking at your practice numbers, what you're really looking at is the same thing as you're looking at in a patient's mouth. You are looking at clues as to what's going on so you can make a proper diagnosis. And ignoring anything that you just don't like the way it looks, it's not a real good way to get a proper diagnosis.
Right. which actually you actually jumped to treatment plan presentation.
Oh, sorry about
but
that.
no, I mean that is exactly. But the other one that is really important is the fact that you've got an office manager. That office manager is running your practice. What statistics are you going to use on your office manager? Because you don't want to be running the practice. You want the office manager or the practice manager running the practice. And if, like, we've got some clients who have 5 or 6 practices, or they have a huge practice. We have, one does $10 million, and they've got, independent, and they have, and they're all in-house, and they have, like 6 doctors or whatever it may be, and all these staff, but they've got basically a CEO who's running it. If you're the doctor who's working at it and you love doing it, because we have doctors who love, you go to school, you love being a doctor. Most people don't go to school just to be a business person. Most of them end up, they've got to become a business person or they're going to die if they don't become. And then some people, go, wow, I'm good at being a business person. I'm going to be a business person now. And they take, then they work maybe a little bit at what they're doing. So you've got to have a statistic that will monitor your ops manager. So, you keep it simple. It's production and collections as an example, and as long as that's going up, then you're happy. As long as, you can have a couple more in there. You could have quality control ones, making sure your patients are doing well. They're happy, because if you have unhappy ones, then, you got problems. But you keep a couple of them, 2 or 3 of them. So you're running the practice with the ops manager, and then the ops manager is running the business for you. And you can look at the breakdown for the office manager can be all the different ones that deal with personnel, that deal with income, that deal with marketing, that deal with sales, that deal with quality control. Those things can be looked at. If the production and collections is starting to flatten or slow down, you can immediately go to the office manager's statistics, what they're doing, and then you can monitor that. And you have a meeting, whether it's once a week or once a month, to have those discussions. The biggest part of the meeting is making sure the person is doing well, and they're purposeful in their activity. They're excited still about it. They want to do it. They're into it. And because remember, you're as the owner, you're the only person that they can really talk to. They can't really talk to anybody else. If they start talking to everybody else, then that can be a problem.
Well, that would be another Silkinese term, nattering.
That's right. Yeah, that goes into the personnel activity, So you've got your owner, and those particular statistics aren't very many, but very important ones to look at. I want to go to sales for a second, because that's kind of a bad word for people.
No, it's not. Sales makes me happy. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I know. Well, people are doing well. They're happy about sales because they know it's an important part. And at one time, we almost got rid of the word sales because it got such a negative connotation. And then we went, no, let's take this thing on and be honest and straight about it. All sales is you're enlightening your patient for what they should be doing that will be best medicine for them. It's not about you. You don't do it with your pocketbook. You just tell them the truth. You be honest with it. You do a proper diagnosis with them. And then when it comes to the money part, you can either, if you don't have a treatment plan coordinator, then you do it yourself. But you got to, you flip it over to somebody going, that's the money. Have them take care of it. We'll figure it out. We'll work it out.
And if you don't know if you're good at sales or not, take a look at the total amount of treatment plan treatment in your books, and the total amount of unscheduled treatment in your books.
There you go.
And
there you go.
Divide the unscheduled treatment by the treatment planned treatment, and that's going to give you your percentage of case acceptance. So
that's right.
If you do that, and it's under 50%, you've got a real problem.
Yeah. We like to see it at 80.
I know. You know what I see generally across the board. Okay, so I have this big group, and I've got like 23,000 dentists that follow me here, and what I see whenever I look into people's financials, when I look into their patient records, trying to help them, is I'll see 15 to 20% acceptance. What do you guys see on average?
Oh, that's about it. I mean, it rolls up to, if somebody thinks they're pretty good, it goes up to 30. But there's another problem that goes with this. I'm sure it's what a doctor can do is start kidding themselves. They'll look in the mouth and then they'll go, oh, I'm only going to present one or two or three things because I don't want to overwhelm them with what it is, versus just giving it is. And then you can always tell them, you don't need to do all of it right away, but here's the truth. Here's what you need. And when that care factor comes out and they understand that, then you work it out and then you get them scheduled and you keep them moving along on it. And like you said, that's, it gives you the data you need, and it's killing a lot of people, which is really sad because they're overworking themselves.
Absolutely. So now we're talking about sales. One of the things that I believe I learned from you guys, I've taken, I've taken so many different consulting things over the past just because I wanted to learn everything. And one of the things I believe it was you who taught me was that there are three different types of sale. There's a soft sell, a hard sell, and a kill sale. And so when we
crush sale.
Yeah.
Crush sale.
Actually, in my practice, I use the words kill sale. So
right.
Copyrighted kill sale. So the thing is there are different mentalities in the way that you sell to people, but there are only certain realities. Unfortunately, many of us are of the mentality that if we go, and you need a crown on tooth number 2, that patient's not going to get that crown. And if you can't sell the dentistry that your patient needs and wants to them, then you are no good. You are of no worldly good. All the skills in your hands, the skills in your brain, none of it means anything unless you can present it to a person who needs it and they accept treatment and they pay you because your efforts are worth money. Right.
Absolutely. And you said it about as clear as a person could say it, because we have seen over the years, without a doubt, there have been people who are technically brilliant technicians, but they were not making even close to the amount of money they should have been making, primarily because of what you just finished saying. And then they would kind of pawn it off to somebody else. But then when they pawned it off, the problem with that was, it doesn't mean that the doctor has to be the salesperson, but when they pawn it off out of fear, you're talking about emotion. When they do it out of fear, it's not logical, because it's what is it that you need as the patient that is correct, and take away all the negative emotions, out of it. It's just so important. And then what happens is you get, you make a hell of a lot more money, I'll tell you that.
And you do more worldly good too. So, there's an old phrase I love. It is doing well by doing good.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. So it's a great one.
Real quick, let's cover what is a soft sell, what is a hard sell, and what is a crush sell.
Okay, you just did kind of the soft sell. I just kind of mumbling, this would be good to do to get a chance sometime. Come back when you get a moment. I mean, that is about as wimpy as you can get. And there's different levels. I mean, everybody knows when they wimp out. Hard sell is when you're like, you believe in what you're doing. You want the person to do it. You care for them. You actually, you can tell the difference between soft and hard and crush. And I believe it sits right in this one piece where you actually care for the person and about their well-being. What you just finished saying, it's like you care about their well-being. You want them to have this because you believe in it. If you don't believe in it, then don't sell them that. Don't say that, because that's always, because we can't monitor that. We tell people, we're not the doctor. You are. you need to know what is best for the person. So then what you do is you get them to understand that. You enlighten them. You bring up the understanding on it, make it more real for them, communicate to them, use all the different tools you have. So that's the second one, which is hard sell.
Right.
And the third one is crush sell, which is pathetically negative in my book, which is you just pressure the person and they're going to do your bidding. It's almost like a Darth Vader kind of a thing. That's a picture I get sometimes. It's like, it's like the person is like, just keeps bearing down on you, just keep bearing you. You're just going like that kind of thing. And it's just demanding without caring and with anyway, it's, you know it and you smell it and you see it when you feel it. I mean, there's no question about it.
I kind of wish I had one of those little voice synthesizer things right now. Luke, this is the crown you need and you will have it now,
Yeah, you will die next week if you don't. Yeah, I mean, that's the differences. So, and most of the time we have to get a person is just to understand what heart, just caring, more care, understand, because most doctors, well, I do care. Well, I do care about him. Well, tell him that. I mean, right. Why are you holding back? What's the holdback? Just tell them the truth,
And there's, I think that there is a confusion about what professionalism is. I find whenever I'm talking to doctors, and I'll be very honest, I teach people a lot of the stuff that you guys taught me when they come to me and they're like, what am I going to do? My practice is failing. Well, how are you talking to your patients? So one of the confusions I believe that most doctors have is they confuse professionalism and cordiality or congeniality. They don't understand that they can be friendly and still be professional. Right. They try to wrap themselves in this professional dignity, and all it does is it puts another roadblock between you and the patient, when in reality your job in selling that patient treatment, and I will use the word sell, people don't like it that I do, but I'll use it all the time because it's true, is you are supposed to remove all of those layers between you and the patient so that they have the fewest hurdles to jump through. And that might be financing, it might be time constraints. There's a lot of different hurdles. Why would you ever set up another one between yourself and the patient and the treatment that they need and deserve?
Yeah, and I love the way you just said that, cordiality to professionalism, because when you go, like going back to the owner system, the owners are going to have to deal with attorneys, CPAs, wealth managers, financial planners, and so forth. And one of the things I said, when you go to an attorney and you say, okay, this is the problem, what do I do? And the attorney says to you, well, I'm not sure, let me think about it, or, I mean, that you want somebody to say, because they're the expert. The doctor is, when I go to the dentist or I go to any doctor, they're the expert. I still have to make up my own mind, but I expect them to tell me the truth and what's going on. And if they don't, I'm like, I got a mealy mouth here. What do I need him for or her for?
So when I'm telling people about exactly what you're talking about, I use the words confident compassion.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Because it's exactly what you want to exude. You want to let the patient know they have made the right decision, not only doing the treatment that you've proposed, but coming to you because you are the right person to work and help them.
Right.
Because you care.
Yes.
And if you can't do those three parts, you will never be successful selling dentistry.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I couldn't have said it better.
Am I hired?
I couldn't. I couldn't. I wish I could, but I go, no, that's about as well as you could say it, because it's that, it's so amazing, because the doctor is an entrepreneur, and that's what's made America are entrepreneurs. And sometimes I have to tell the doctor over and over, you're a business person who takes risks, financial risk, That's the definition of an entrepreneur. You can keep your head, you can stand proud as an American.
It's funny because many people confuse risk and investment. A practice is risk. It's not an investment. It's not investment until it's sold.
That's right. That's right.
So I actually just ran a poll in my group, and hundreds of people who responded. And I said, just food for thought. Why did you start your dental practice?
Yes.
Because you wanted to build a business that you could sell for a profit, or B, because you couldn't work for someone else. And the funny thing is some of them admitted that they simply couldn't work for other people, but the majority of them would couch that same exact thing in saying something to the effect of, I wanted to practice the ethical care that I knew could be practiced if someone wasn't telling me what to do. So the truth is that 90% of them are technicians, and they think that they started their practice because it's the stories we tell ourselves, right? They think they started their practice for some, altruistic reason. There really is no such thing as altruism. There's just facts. I started this practice. It makes me feel good to practice this way. That's great. And I can't practice for someone else because I don't like to be told what to do. So I can't work for other people. So I also, personally, I wanted to build a business that I could sell down the road for a profit. And so that is why I sought out the help of people like Silkin, because I wanted to build a business that was sellable. And I also couldn't work for somebody else. I think that we're not real honest with ourselves whenever we answer those questions, because we want the answer to our question to sound noble. But there's nothing more noble than creating value.
Right.
And that's really what you're doing whenever you're creating a business. When you're growing a business, you're creating value, not just for yourself, but for your team members and for your patients as well, if you're practicing ethically.
That's right. Yeah, you're creating value with the patient. I mean, the patient is getting value. If you can't give your patient value, in both the technical expertise as well as the care factor, then you're not going to build a good business. You just won't. I mean, that's how we've stayed in business that long too. We believe in it. Believe in what you just said.
You believe in an exchange in abundance, which is another set of these terms. Okay, so we've talked about the owner section a lot. We've talked a little bit about the executive section.
Right.
Let's talk about the doctor.
Okay.
So doctors is doctors. So talk to me about that.
Well, the doctor is located in a particular area of the practice. Now, this is you're talking about facts, and I don't mean to be harsh on doctors, but this is the truth. If you're an owner, you can hire a doctor. If you're a doctor, you don't hire an owner. Right. It doesn't work that way. So all you got to do is kind of look at the two and kind of go, oh, okay, without the owner. Now, an owner needs doctors and needs good doctors. So if an owner, let's say yourself, you're going to hire a doctor, well, you're hiring yourself, and you know how good or bad you are, or hopefully you know how well how kind of technician you are, and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to have a lot of business acumen. You need to have some business acumen. You need to be able to do treatment plan presentations correctly, as an example. You need to give best medicines properly. Those are key items. You still all need to be able to interact with the patient really well, because patients expect some sort of compassion and kindness and working with them and all that kind of stuff. So those are skill sets that a doctor has to have, as well as the skill sets of working with their direct assistants. So when you're talking, hygienists can be off to the side in certain ways. I mean, they interact, but it depends on how they're doing it. But the doctor is they're one-on-one with that patient, and that patient looks up to them. I mean, not only literally, but figuratively, they care about them. So, but they're not necessarily the doctor isn't necessarily the one who's overseeing the practice. Mm-hmm. That's a different position. So when you ask that, I don't know if that's what type of answer you wanted, but that's the type I just, you'll have to dig around a little bit more if you want more from me.
No, that makes perfect sense to me. What am I not asking that I should be?
Wow.
I always get people with that question.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good question. It's funny because that's one of the questions we ask when we interview people. It's like, why should have I asked you what I didn't ask? Because I could get the rest of it. I think one of the, you asked me that. Yeah, you asked me a lot. What didn't I ask? Boy, I'm going to come up with one, which I think we played around with. I don't know if doctors realize, some do, and I know who they are. There's a certain percentage, how important they are to their community. They are, they've done a lot of surveys and research. Doctors are way up here in regards to the community and how people think about them. I've spent a lot of time in community service, or I've spent a lot of, and not because I got any, I don't even use the company name. So I'm not even talking about doing it from it's a good PR angle. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about doctors are typically have scientific method in their minds because they had to go through the science part. If they've got a practice, I wouldn't get involved in the community unless you've already done well in your practice, because it gets difficult at times to do that because you should be focused. But when you get to that point, when you feel it, give, because people really want to hear from you. Just like what you're doing, I consider that giving. I do. I really do, because you're helping the community, and it's big.
So I'm going to disagree with you, but I think you're going to end up agreeing with me. Okay.
Okay.
Good works, well publicized.
That's correct.
One of the things that I did that drove my success was every single year in October we would start advertising. We are looking for one worthy person to change their life through dentistry. Send us their stories. You may not nominate yourself. You may not nominate your spouse. You can only do it to help a stranger or a friend. And we get all of these letters in, and my team would go through them, and whatever new technique or skill I was trying to highlight in my practice, I would narrow them down to that field. And then I'd give them to my team, because I wanted my team to have buy-in to it. And I wanted them to have an emotional hook, because I want them to feel this the same way that I do. I had them read through all of them and narrow them down to like 2 or 3 choices each from each of them. And then I read those and I proposed 3 people. And then my team picked the one that we're going to do. And we would invite that person in. If they didn't come, we went down the list to the next person. But we would invite that person in and tell them that they had been entered into a contest to win a free dental exam. And they would come into the practice. I would treatment plan them, tell them everything they need. Generally, there were a lot of tears because these people needed a lot of work, because somebody else, not a dentist, had noticed that they were having dental issues, which that takes a lot. And then I would walk in the room and I'd say, this is how much the treatment is going to cost. But you actually are the winner of our Christmas miracle. And so the new price, and I'd write down a big 0. And giving them the original price was something that I learned strategically from Silkin. Because if you don't assign a value to something, then it has value. So I would give them that piece of paper, and I'd say, because our community here in Alvin voted for you, we are going to do this treatment completely free. All I ask is you do a couple of videos for us and allow us to document it so that we can show other people what we can do here. Got lots and lots of business from that because we would document every single stage and we'd post it on Facebook. So, Fred, did I convince you?
You convinced me. I actually just wrote it down, which I typically don't do much writing down. And yeah, it actually was very, had great emotional impact on me just now while you were saying that, because it is, you do good works well publicized. That is part of our part of what we do, and we tell people like you're doing. You took it over the top. There's no question about it. Well, there's absolutely no question.
The reason I thought of that was whenever I met Dr. Sheridan.
Oh, yeah.
He inspired me.
Yeah. Dr. Sheridan does all kinds of, and he's got a booming practice. I mean, he just, he's like, and that was part of the conversation we're having, is that when you give back, it makes a huge difference, not only to your community, but just sharing it with the other doctors, just what you just finished saying. If
Absolutely.
Just one of out of the 23,000, or one person does that, what a great impact. I mean, what a wonderful impact.
And honestly, the impact on the doctor is immense as well. Being a dentist, being a practice owner can be a very hard thing sometimes. And a lot of times there's a lot of emotional turmoil that goes into it, whether it be from team issues or second guessing ourselves, because we're all very type A. And we always play, I like to say, we look at other people's highlight reels and we look at our blunder reels. We always play back the things in our heads that we've messed up or that we could have done a better job at, and we beat ourselves up. When you do something like this, there is just a light that shines in you and reminds you why you love what you do.
Right.
And what kind of gift your hands and your brain can give to someone else. And that you're doing it on a daily, on a daily. It's not like this one thing, this one time a year that you're giving is the special thing. It's just a celebration of what you're able to do for your patients in your community every single day of the week.
Yeah. I'll interview next year. I'll interview you instead of you me. This is great. Honestly, it's great.
You make a great interviewee for several reasons. First of all, you're just a great person. I really believe in what you guys do, and it's helped me a lot. But also because I think I've gotten an insight into the way that you think and the way that you do things, simply because of our interactions over the years and the things that I've seen you do and not just say. So
well,
I'm really glad you could join us here today. Is there anything else that we should cover before we go?
No. As I mentioned, if a doctor just looks at there's 6 systems and they think with that, the metrics, those are underneath. That's what gets you to watch something. But if they as they're learning life, as a doctor, as an owner, think in terms of you got an owner system. That's a whole hat within itself. The doctor system, you've got it. I mean, you're already dealing with it all the time. I don't even have it in there now because it is what you do and it's yours. But you got an executive, you got a sales system, you got a finance system. Really keep your mind onto that particular aspect. You got marketing and you got public relations. So really when you're looking at your practice, which ones are weak, which ones are strong. And just keep pushing forward like you do, just keep pushing forward and go forward into their community, do well.
So before I get you to do what I like to call station identification, which is reminding people who you are and how they can get in touch with you, I'm going to challenge our listeners out there to do one thing. Guys, you just heard Fred talk about the different systems that you need to have in place in your practice if you want to be successful. My challenge for you is to take a blank sheet of paper, draw a square at the top, and say owner. And then I want you to write your name next to owner. Then I want you to put dentist. And next to dentist, if you have dentists in your practice that are not you, I want you to actually do that multiple times, once for each one. Write their name next to it. Then I want you to put down marketing, and I want you to write down whoever's name that is. If you, at the end of the day, have only one name, yours, next to all those duties, you definitely need to change something in the way that you're running your practice, because that is square one telling you that you're not being as efficient with your time or your skills as you could be. Fred, would you agree with that?
I totally agree with it. That's how you can analyze your own, and also you can do it not only your name, but the emotion that it brings up. If you look at it and go, owner, I don't know what that is. You say executive, oh gosh. You go personnel, headache. Anything like that. Finance, I wish I had more. Right. Marketing, got no idea. Public relations, I think I'm okay. Any of those become questionable for yourself and your ability to deal with it, then you can nail it right that way too.
So is that emotional thing one of the things you guys teach with Silkin or not? Because I'm going to steal that. I just want to make sure it's not Silkin's.
Hey, listen,
that's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, if I do it when we'll get an owners conference, and I'll walk around and I'll go, "Are you having problems?" "No, I'm feeling great." I go, "Good, take a look. Let's walk through this." And by the time they're going, we've got one circled, because it is like, there's something
where the big
there.
problem is. That's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, they got a situation there. Like you said at the beginning, it's a think logically, but we all deal emotionally to a certain degree, and personnel, as an example, can hit people the hardest. And, and they just kind of like, and, I was going to pull up something here if I could. I don't know if I have it. But it's
You realize we could probably fill another 4 of these hour segments. I mean, I'm not even just thinking communications and tonal scale is. That's 2 hours by itself.
Yeah, the tone scale, as you probably know, the emotional tone scale of an individual is so key. When COVID hit, one of the things I did 6 videos. It was an outflow. It was promotion for ourselves, because I saw it flatten. I go, good. What can we do to help our clientele right now? And when I did, I said, I know you're getting hit hard right now. I got it. So the first thing is, remember when you went through the emotional tone scale? Are you down here in apathy? Are you pissed off? Or are you trying to outthink this thing right now? If you're trying to outthink it, good, you're at the right level. And if you're not, you're in deep doo-doo. You can quote me on that one.
One of the things that I always find funny whenever you go to a consultant, and it's, do they drink their own Kool-Aid? And that's one of my favorite things about Silkin, is that you guys use the same techniques that you teach. It was really kind of funny. I actually had a conversation. I don't believe it was Alan Jackson. I'm trying to remember which one of the consultants I was talking to, and he said something, and I looked at him and said, "Dude, you can't Silkin me. I know those techniques." I'm not sure if he was offended or if he was proud.
Yeah. He was probably really proud, actually, because one of the key things is that if you understand. If you have the knowledge of something, you won't be the adverse effect to it. You won't, it won't, and if you understand, if when somebody's lying to you, you can tell. There's things that can tell, and you'll spot it, and that will protect you. And sometimes the biggest liars look like the biggest straight people you can see, but there's always an undercurrent, So I think he would take it as a big compliment, actually. He was happy.
I took something that I learned from you guys very much to heart. Be it cause in your environment.
Yes. Yeah, I say that over and over to not only clients, to my own staff. Either your cause or your effect. Which one are you going to be? Are you going to be, proactive or reactive? Are you going to be the person who's going to make the decisions for solutions, or are you going to be the problem to the solution? Are you going to be the problem? If you're not part of the solution, as the saying going, you're part of the problem. You just keep moving. In that
chemistry,
direction.
We always said, if you are not part of the solution, then you're a precipitate.
That's right. And what you do, you're a catalyst. I mean, yes, you form education, but you're getting people to think. And one of our most basic things is, if it's not true for you, it's not true. So, you make it your own. You test it out. You see if it works. If it works, then good. And if it doesn't work, then okay.
I had the most humorous complaint about me one day. Someone said something about hearing something from me, and this person just doesn't like me, and they said, "Oh, you mean that happens, right? Hey, if you are measured in this life by the quality of the enemies that you acquire."
Oh yeah.
So I asked him. I said something, and the guy said, "Oh, you mean that guy who owns the business group who doesn't even own his own practice anymore?" Which isn't true, because I still own 30% of both of my practices. And I just kind of responded with, "Yeah, because I'm the guy who knew the system so that I could get there."
Right. I love it.
All right, my friend.
Oh,
so, Fred, tell me real quick, how can people get in touch with you and hire Silkin on to help them out, or at the very least, find out if you guys might be a good fit?
Yeah, the big thing we do, which I highly recommend, is we do something nobody else does. Honestly, I haven't seen any. I have, you mentioned Alan Jackson. I have, he's our,
not the singer,
with our top, pardon me?
Not the singer.
No, no, he gets that a lot too. But here, let me give you our number. He was for probably 20 years our top consultant. And then I decided about, I don't know, it's been 15, almost 20 years now, to put him as an analyst. And what he does is he analyzes practices. He does. That's what he does day in and day out. And he spends probably, my average is 5 to 6 hours. And it's not a BS type of analysis either. I mean, it's in depth. This is how we prove ourselves. We have testimonials from thousands of people that we can prove ourselves. But what we do is we analyze the practice, go through it with them, what they're able to control, what they don't control, what they need help on. It goes right through it. At the end, we go, this is what we can do for you. If you don't want to, it's up to you. But here is what we can do for you. So we've been doing this for about 15 years now. And it's worked really well, because what's happened is people kick the tires big time. And we put our mouth where our money is. So
it's notable, I think, to tell everyone that all modern business management, and I may be misspeaking here, so please do correct me, all modern business management techniques stem directly from the Hubbard management system, which is Silkin is.
Yeah. You mean ours?
No. All modern management, it's management by statistics, things like that. It all stems.
Yeah,
from
a lot of them. I'd say a tremendous amount of them have come out of that system. There's. I've studied other ones, but he was doing stuff 50 years ago that was way ahead of anybody else. I mean, way ahead of people. So, I don't know if I'd say all, but I'd say a lot. Let's put it that way.
Pretty darn close.
Yeah, like I said, I taught MBAs at the university level, and a lot of the professors would be going, "Whoa, that's really good! Wow, that's great!" When I was teaching. So, yeah.
So, Fred,
I'd say
give us that number where they can call and get the analyst to take a look at their practice.
Okay, good. Here, I'm gonna pull up I hadn't expected you to do this to me, so I think I'd.
You're as bad as me. I don't know my number because I have my phone. I don't call myself.
Yeah, well, typically I carry a card. I'm working at home, and then we were talking about doing this. You're actually more in depth than I expected. You're you were not only a good student, but you were you applied, which is the one thing that we constantly tell people. You've got to apply the materials. We've got the materials.
Implementation.
You've got to implement, and it's one of the key things for it. So here, I've got it. Here's how you can call us: 877-386-0388. And you can ask for me, ask for Alan Jackson. I have about 30 people that work for me. They'll get you to me. They'll get to Alan, and we'll do anything we can to help. Fantastic. So just give us a buzz.
Well, guys,
we also do, if you have a question, we also do a 1 hour thing where we just do nothing. Like if you need help in something, we'll do a free hour with you and just help you. And Ken DeRoshi does that. He's been doing that for 25 years. You go, I got a problem here. I heard that you give, help on for an hour, and then he'll set up a time for you and he'll help you. Marketing, sales, it makes no difference. So that's how we do it. We do it by showing.
You guys used to be only in person, and so they had to go to Portland. But I imagine that with COVID, you guys have changed some of that. And I know that about 8 years ago, you were starting to do some digital online stuff. Where are you now?
Yeah, well, what happened is 8 or 10 years ago, we started this whole virtual stuff. We were way ahead of most people. We would actually send out a TV monitor to people so we could try it.
I remember the logistics of that were a nightmare.
Oh, it was unbelievable, but I really believed in it. So we started that whole process 10 years ago, but the technology wasn't up to it yet. Skype and Apple and all those weren't even close to it. So, but over time we kept building it. I thought as the beginning of this, we were talking, I thought there was going to be a recession coming in 2019, 2018. And the only reason I did it, you did it off of looking at Federal Reserve and particular measures. I was doing it there's been a recession approximately every 10 years. And I'm going, it's been going, we went through forum. So I'm kind of going, duh, it's happening again. I was wrong. It did not happen in 2019, but we were ready for it because we were doing virtual by then. We had done hundreds of conferences virtual. We had been doing consulting virtual. We had been doing a bunch of stuff by that time in 2018. So I took egg off my face when it didn't happen in 19, but it hit in 20, and we were ready. We were able to move from people coming to us into virtual world in 2 weeks full time, and we haven't looked back since. People love it. If they want to come, they can still come. We just opened up if people wanted to, but otherwise we're not getting rid of virtual and online stuff at all. So that is what's happening.
So I'll tell you, I signed the papers to sell that first practice February 16th, 2020.
Oh.
I don't know if I can say anything about timing the market because I thought something different was going to happen, but boy, am I glad I picked up that Wall Street Journal. And you know my wife very well. We had just had an argument over the kids, and I said, I'm just going to go to breakfast, and I'm going to come back later when I'm not mad. So I went to breakfast. The Wall Street Journal was sitting there. I opened it right to this article. I read it, and I went, holy crap, there's going to be a huge recession.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, well, that's
the luck of the Irish, right? So, So Fred, give them that number one more time.
877-386-0388.
Fantastic. Guys, you've wasted another hour listening to the sound of my voice. I hope that you've gotten some value from this. Again, this is Fred King from Silkin, who's joined us today and dropped a little bit of knowledge on you guys. Thank you, as always, for being a listener to the Dear Doc podcast. Have a fantastic day.
Thanks for listening to the Dear Doc podcast, your source for the business and legal questions associated with your dental practice. Don't forget to subscribe to the Dear Doc podcast on all major platforms.